Howdy folks, welcome back to Advent of Code 2024. We are going to be looking at the second day, red nose reports. So there's actually quite a lot fewer text, quite less text than there was last time. Something about a nuclear fusion plant that seems to be a reference to 2015. Apparently this has been going on for a long time. Unusual data analysis. Puzzle input consists of many reports, one report per line. Each report is a list of numbers called levels or separated by spaces. Okay, so we're looking at a grid here. So we've got line, line. So each one of these is a report. Each one of these numbers is a level. 6 reports containing 5 levels. So trying to figure out which reports are safe. Okay, so this is data analysis. We're trying to figure out which of these datas mean something. They can only tolerate levels that are either increasing or decreasing. The report only counts as safe if both the following are true. The levels are all increasing or all decreasing, presumably not both. So if you've got increase, decrease, or decrease, increase, that's not safe. They can differ by at least 1 and at most 3. Okay. Okay. At least 1 and at most 3. So that means 0 isn't allowed. And at most 3. So 4 isn't allowed either. That I assume based on this number, this is inclusive, not exclusive, or based on the text. So here's our example. Okay. This one is safe. The levels are all decreasing by 1 or 2. Yeah, 1, 2, 2, 1. Okay, 1. This goes up by 5, which is an increase of 5, so that's unsafe. So this is a decrease 2, 1, 4, so that's unsafe. This one is increase 2. Okay, so this has an increase and then a decrease, so that's unsafe. So then we have decrease, decrease, 0, which is unsafe. Kind of a weird reactor, but who knows. And this one is 2, 3, 1, and 2. Math is hard. So that one's safe. Okay. And then they're just asking how many reports are safe. Not even asking which ones are safe. They're just asking how many. So it's not the hardest thing ever. Let's start with the sample this time. Okay, so let's look at here. Sample. I'm just going to do this as a simple text file right now because that's just going to be simpler. All right, so first we want to pull this data in and process it. Okay, so let's get path and file path equals path join and sample.txt. And I'll just do what I did last time and just pull the whole file. Contents equals, oh, yes, but just like that. Okay, so now we're going to split them. Not going to do that. Lines equals contents.split by the new line to get all the lines. And then we're going to loop over all those lines. Maybe I will use we'll actually use a map for this. Const reports equals lines.map return line.split by a space. Okay. And then let's just see what we get for reports. So what we've done right now, if we pulled in the file, got all that data, this is actually fairly important, especially if you're getting data from a text file, is you need to convert it into a format you're able to actually work with. That's an error. Lines.split, that's right, because that would be line, not lines. Because lines is an array. Okay, that looks right. So these actually should be numeric. And so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to map over that. Oops. And just turn it into an integer like that. Cool. This is debatable. This is kind of a little expensive to do this, but that's okay. It's probably not the biggest deal. Okay, so now let's just loop over them. No, that's PHP. And that is renaming, so that's not what I want to do. Sometimes the AI doesn't get it quite right. Okay, so for each report, we assume, so there's a couple ways to handle this. What I'm probably going to go with here is I'm going to use a flag and to start off and say, okay, is safe, and this is going to be a Boolean, and I'm actually going to start it off as true. Now, the reason for this is there's two things I could start off here. I could start off with true or I could start with false. If I start with false, then I have to basically go through the whole report, and then if I find some situation that tells me it is safe, I set it to true. Now, given the format of this data, it's actually kind of hard to, while looping through this, say, oh, at some point, yes, this is safe. What it's easier to do is loop through this and find, oh, this is not safe, right? So it's a lot easier to go through this and find a point where I can definitively say it is not safe, which means that I can assume starting out the report is safe, and then if I ever find evidence to the contrary, I'll mark it as not safe. So that's sometimes you'll want to do the inverse, where you'll assume it is not the condition until you find evidence to the contrary. Like if I was looking for like the number 2 in this list, for example, I'd probably say is found is false. And then as soon as I find 2, I would say it's true. So you got to kind of think about which one you want to do in that case. Anyway, item of report, not reports. So that is not anything helpful. Thank you. So we actually need to know the previous item as well. And we need to know ascending versus descending. Let's just do the gaps for now. So I'm going to start that off as null. So let's say if item, okay, minus prev. Well, so first of all, if we have a previous item, well, do I want to do this? No, this might not be safe. So basically, I'm trying to say like, okay, in the case where this previous item is set to null, then we just skip this condition. But what might actually be a better idea in case like this, if you can assume that there are actually entries in your reports, you could probably actually set this to the first one and then only loop over from 1 to report.length. Oopsie. Wow. I equals reports I, because then this actually means that I've already got that previous set immediately. Okay, so if let's calculate the distance, and I'm going to use the absolute that I did last time, previous item minus item, thank you, because that will get you the absolute distance, and at the end of this is important, like this needs to happen at the end of the loop, otherwise it's never going to give you anything useful. If distance is less than 1 or distance is greater than, yes, if distance is greater than distance, that makes perfect sense, is safe equals false, and the break here is actually not required, but at this point we figured out it's not safe. There's no point in continuing forward, right? It's just, there's no reason. We don't care. Okay, so now if is safe, let's actually just increment total safe. And if it is safe, total safe plus plus total safe reports, total safe. So this is missing a condition, but I just want to see if that first one works. Okay, so we got 3 safe reports, which is presumably this one, and this one, and then probably another one in here that's safe as well. So now we want to make sure that they're all going the same direction. So like this is all descending, this is all ascending, this one's going both directions, so it's not valid. But probably this is the one that was marked safe currently, because we don't have that check. So what we can do is let's do this. What I want to do is I want to track, we can basically track, because these are all supposed to be the same, I can check if this is descending first, right? The very first 2 things. Are they descending? If they are, cool. If they are descending, then we expect every single other relationship after that point to also be descending. If we ever get something that's not descending, we know it's fail. So what I actually can do is I can say descending equals, and so I'm gonna assume now there's 2 numbers. So let's see, priv dot minus report 1 is less than 0. So if the previous minus 1. So if the 0th element minus the first element is less than 0, that actually means it's ascending. So this should be greater than 0. We're not bothering to check for actual, like, that 4 and 4. So if it's not descending or ascending, because this case will actually handle that. Okay, so now I actually am putting here is descending. You know what? This is a bad thing, but I'm just gonna do that. So then item. Okay, so now if is descending does not equal is descending temp false and break. So that's a little complicated. Basically, what I'm doing here is I'm checking the first two numbers in the list and saying, is that a descending or ascending? I do that by calculating the subtraction of them, and if that's above 0. If it's above 0, it means the previous is bigger than report 1, which means it's going down. Then every time I loop, I calculate the same thing again. Previous minus item. And then I say, if they're not the same, then it's gone on a curve. The thing to note is because I'm only going from I equals 1, I actually will do this comparison twice. So the first time I run here, this is descending will be over the 0th and the first element. And then the first time this loop runs, it'll also be over the 0th and the first element. But that's okay, because the only thing I'm checking for is equality here. And you better hope they're equal. You're working off of the same exact numbers. So let's see what we get now. Now we get 1. Ooh, something broke there. Okay, time to do some debug. Log report is descending. Somehow I've broken my IntelliSense. Okay, so this one, yes. This one is, okay, that's fine. Descending, yes, not descending. Descending, okay, so at least that works. And now, item. And let's check this. Okay, so that's all great. All trues, cool. It's interesting. Why did I get an undefined here? Because this is going off reports.length. That's why. That might actually be the issue. That is the issue. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. See, sometimes just typo a single thing. Okay, 2 reports. And that is what we expect off of this. They're showing us 2 reports are safe. Now let me get my actual data. These are of differing lengths now, which is totally fine. Let's see, data. As long as they all have at least 2 elements, right? So that is an assumption I'm making with this code. The reason I'm making that assumption is I'm doing this. So yeah, that's just kind of an assumption I'm making. You don't have to necessarily. There are ways around that assumption. You'd use guards to say, oh, if I only got 1, then they would actually have to tell you what to do in that case, because it's not ascending or descending or no gap. So I wouldn't actually really know what to do there. All right, now let's just pop that in there. Okay, 572. Let's put that in there and let's see what we get. 572. There we go. All right, let's talk about that algorithm just once more. So the first part here is pretty simple. It's actually just getting the data out of the file, reading it into a format we can handle. Again, if the file was much longer, like, what is this? It's 1,000. I think it's 1,000 lines again. Yeah, so it's 1,000 lines. If it was much longer, I would not use read file sync. I'd actually get the individual lines one by one, because that's better for memory. But turning this into a format that we can actually use, that array of arrays, and actually turning them into integers, because everything that comes out of a file is a string. Then we loop over each one, assume it's safe to start off with, and just let the data contradict us later on. We get our initial first entry, which I guess I could give a better name to. We figure out if it starts out descending. So these are kind of initial states, like the initial state of the system. Is it descending or is it ascending? Because we want to continue on that path. And then we loop over starting from 1 because we don't actually need to look at the first one since we're doing a comparison in here. We grab our item, we look at the distance, and then we look at, again, is it descending? So if it's descending, if the descent of our current pair that we're looking at does not match the first one, and we only need to check the first one. The reason is if we ever find any irregularities, we fail immediately. We're not really saying, oh, did we find 2 that are going wrong or that has to go up and down. If we need to find a specific pattern, we need much more complicated logic in here to be able to do that. But right now, we're just saying, does it match at all? Because it always has to match. Then we just make sure our distance is okay. And if either of those cases are not true, we immediately abort the loop because there's no need to continue. If we find the first 3 elements and already, or 2 elements even, and already that distance is too high, why bother looking at the others? We know the report's not safe. So we can immediately break out of the loop here. And then we just increment our total safe. In the case that's safe, this is important too. We go ahead in the loop, like every time, it's like a sliding window of 2 elements pretty much. So honestly, what we could do, we don't even need this technically. We could just say report 0 because we know it's always going to be 1 behind. And we could actually just say I minus 1 here. And that also would be completely fine, and then we wouldn't even need this. There you go. So that might be a better way of going about it, just because we're starting from 1 here. So don't feel bad about trying to improve your algorithms after the fact. Anyway, I hope this is interesting, and I'll see you all next time.